Good evening. Call the November 8th meeting of the Harris Township Board of Supervisors to order and ask that you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Approval of minutes, we have two sets, October 4, October 11. Ask for one motion for both.
Of October 27th.
Three.
Three. Oh, okay. Got the circle one. Three of them, October 27th also. So moved. Second? Discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Citizen comments. Anyone want to comment on a non-agenda item? We'll give you 5 minutes. Okay.
Chair. Yes, my name's Harvey Hanlon. I have one question, and Mr. Chairman, I'd like to know if I can pose a question or two to Mr. Shea.
Is this related to another agenda item? or
No,
not?
it is not.
Okay.
It is
Yeah,
not.
I guess you can.
Okay, so my question, Todd, is this. If a resident in Harris Township owns a property with multi parcels, and they want to put them together to consolidate it, do you follow, I'm assuming what you do is you follow the municipal planning, what is it called? Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, correct?
We follow our Chapter 11, which is our subdivision and land development ordinance, which is based upon the requirements of the MPC.
So if I own 4 properties and I wanted to make them into one, is that counted as a new subdivision or consolidation?
It's the same thing.
Well, the reason I ask the question is because in the municipality code, it talks about a subdivision means that you are dividing or doing a redivision of 2 or more lots to make them smaller, not bigger,
Okay?
correct?
Yeah.
So when somebody does that, and it goes through the process, I think, Mark, you take a look at it, correct?
Yes.
And also the fire chief
And the township engineer.
and the township engineer, okay. And at that point in time, if somebody consolidates their lots to one, are they then required to add, if they're not on sewer, are they required to add water to that when it's now one lot?
Anytime the subdivision and land development ordinance is triggered, all the requirements in that ordinance are applicable.
So even if you're making 4 lots into one,
It's still a subdivision plan, yes.
it's still a subdivision plan?
Yes.
Even though definition doesn't say that?
Well, the MPC definition doesn't say that. I believe our definition does.
Your definition says subdivision is making something bigger.
I think I just explained what our definition does.
I just asked you again, all you can do is say yes.
Asked and
It's
answered.
not a big deal.
Asked and answered.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Others?
Yeah, I have one. I'd like to make a comment. I'd like to acknowledge the passing of one of our past supervisors, Mr. Joe Carroll. Who passed away. And as I remember Joe as being on the board, very, very quiet, very studious, and everybody always honored his, felt good of his suggestions and his decisions. So he's was a good member of the board when he was on here. So, yeah.
Thank you. No more comments on non-agenda items? Okay. New agenda items, Amy, we do have one.
Yes, we have one to add related to hometown Christmas and some requests for street closures and to use the fireplace. Would you like me to go over that now?
Yeah, do that now,
Okay.
we'll get rid of it then.
Hometown Christmas is asking to use the Bollesburg Fire Police from 4 to 6:30 on December 4th. And then they're also asking to close the following streets East Pine Street to North Church Street to East Main Street to North Academy Street to East Pine Street. They're making a big loop from 4 to 5:30 for carriage rides, and then the Diamond from West Main and West Main from Tennis Alley to the Diamond from 5:30 to 6:30 for the tree lighting.
Ask for a motion to add that to the agenda.
I move we add that to the
Second.
agenda for immediate consideration.
Got it. Discussion? We'll vote on that now. All in favor of that, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Good. That it?
That's it.
Oh. Township business, Bowl Beer Works preliminary land development plan. This has a motion with it, so I'd entertain a motion and then a second to get into discussion. Someone want to move a motion on that?
I'll make a motion that we would consider the Old Beer Works Incorporated primary, or preliminary land development plan.
Okay, second?
Second.
Oh, okay. Now we'll do discussion.
This point of order here. So we have a motion to approve waivers, a recommended motion to approve waivers first. I would think you'd want to do
It's in the
that.
motion still.
Well, yeah, the whole thing, I guess. But so your motion would include approving the waivers, the entire block that's on here.
Well, my motion was to consider the preliminary land development plan. That's, so we could have discussion, but I didn't, no, I might have some discussion on those waivers, but I want to have
That's
the
where we are now.
discussion.
We have the discussion point, so.
Right, so that's why, and the waiver can come after that, a motion on the waivers
Correct.
can come after that.
Okay.
Okay, discussion? Dwayne?
Nobody here from them to talk?
Well, I just had one thing here.
Well, let's hear from them. I mean,
What's that, what do you want to hear?
well, okay, I don't care how you want to
We'll
do it.
go around.
Generally, we.
Well, I was gonna say, I thought we usually get a presentation, Bud's right, we usually get a presentation.
Are they here?
Well, I'd like to hear what they would say first before we get.
Microphone.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Gordon Kaufman, and I'm the owner of Bowl Beer Works. And I'm here today to discuss with you the plan here. We've got the preliminary land development plan for the project. It is a small tap room with a beer brew house. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you have any questions for me about it?
Well, I
Let's go around supervisor.
Okay, the only thing I'm looking at here is, as I reviewed the plan and everything, but as I'm looking here on where you have 11-4.5A, the applicant requested existing on-light septic systems on the property be allowed to continue to be utilized until such a time that they are no longer function, at which time the system will be replaced by public sewer. The only thing I've highlighted there is, you know, what we've been hearing with all this rezoning about inside the growth boundary and outside the growth boundary and on-light septic versus, we're kind of going in two directions here. I mean, if it's gonna be inside the growth boundary, why wouldn't we say, yeah, you gotta have it on sewer now? And if it's the other way, well, then I guess it wouldn't matter when we're looking at some of these ag properties that, hey, if they want to be on sewer and they're inside the growth, they should be able to be that. I mean, it looks like we're going in two directions here. And I understand this is a waiver request, but that confused me. I don't understand, we're either going to go one way or the other. We're either going to say, you're going to be on sewer or you're not going to be on sewer. Or, you know, if it fails, we all know that could be catastrophic. We don't know that. The other part of that equation, as I was reading all this stuff, and I read some of the other things, the land consolidation letter when I read it, we're talking about, you know, proof of this, proof of that. Well, all these on-light septic systems are on the Center Region Inspection Program, and we look at them on a current basis, and you know, if they fail, that process works. So I don't understand why we're trying to muddy the waters, I guess.
What's going on?
So the ordinance, the subdivision and land development ordinance would require all properties in the growth boundary to connect to the sewer service system. So the waiver request specifically is just for the existing development on the property. Mr. Kaufman is proposing to connect the beer works to public sewer. So the waiver request was just to keep the existing mansion, I think the carriage house and the Bowl Barn on the existing on-lot septic that is there. Certainly the board can deny the waiver request and require them to connect to public sewer, but this is a process that has been used in the past where I think the best example is the Mountain View Country Club. They had the small maintenance building down there off of Elks Club Road that had an on-lot septic system that they were allowed to connect just the hotel and whatnot to the sewer, but to have a pump station designed in the future, if there's ever a failure, they would connect that little maintenance building to the sewer system. So ultimately, it is up to the board to decide. If you do not want to approve a waiver, you don't have to. But, you know, we informed Mr. Kaufman that this is a route he could go in requesting the waiver when, I don't think it was known that there was on-lot septic initially when the plan was submitted either, so it was something that we found out later on.
Yeah, his parcel that he's developing, that's like a 40-acre property out there, 39-acre property. His parcel that he's developing will be on public sewer. It's just that there's existing on-lot septic that we didn't know about, frankly,
Right.
until we saw the mapping that came back, that's all. And that's across the street and not near where he's developing.
And I would add that to do what's recommended in the agenda would be consistent with what the board's done 3 or 4 times previously. Whenever there is existing development that is old enough that it has on-lot septic in a public sewer area, the board has consistently issued this waiver.
We also did have those, the on-lot septic evaluated by a professional soil scientist, Mary Kay Lupton, and she confirmed that they were in good working order and that they should be evaluated every 3 years, as you mentioned, by code to make sure that they continue to work like they're supposed to.
Well, I'm confident in the code system. They do a good job of checking all the septic tanks in the region, not just the ones that are here, but I have no problem with that system. I was just a little confused on the 2 ways we're looking at things. I think we always got to be looking at them the same way. We can't look at one property one way and another property another way, so.
Nigel?
I have nothing. It's interesting, though, the deed of the land, isn't that deeded to the nonprofit organization that the family collectively owns?
Yeah, that's what Mr. Kaufman's trying to figure out right now, because I believe it's deeded to the trust, the Matilda Bowl Trust. And after Matilda passed in 2011, I believe the sole trustee of that was Chris Lee, and obviously Chris Lee is not in the state right now. So they're trying to figure out who the signatory would be on that property, and that's something that's a discussion point for the trust. And then there's a local society that also runs stuff at the mansion. So that's a can of worms that has to be figured out.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
the thing is, you'd think it would be the CEO of the whole nonprofit organization, wouldn't you?
I don't know.
that's always been my understanding. However, based on my conversation with Amy and staff, we're trying to figure out exactly, legally who should sign that document at this point. But yeah.
Good? Okay. Bud?
Well, my question, I guess what I just understood from this, the Bull Mansion is on a private sewer.
There are 3 buildings there that have their own septic tanks.
Sewer
That's
system.
correct.
The barn?
So
Home?
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
That's
Okay,
correct.
And
Yep.
then,
On that side of the street?
Correct.
okay, so the gatehouse is public sewer?
Correct.
Okay.
It's
And
already
that's where you're
connected.
going to.
That's
would like to
correct.
locate.
Yeah.
So, I see, and yeah. Obviously, we don't know if there's a problem with the Bull sewer system unless it's inspected. It's not, does it get inspected or has it?
It has been by Mary Kay Lupton. She evaluated the septic system there and said it was in good working order.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so then if anything happened to that sewer system, then they would have to pay to get onto the
That's-
public, which
that-
they would have to anyway. Whether no matter what happens at the gatehouse, if that system fails, they have to go on.
Yeah.
So I don't see any, I'm fine.
So the gatehouse is not on sewer?
The gatehouse is connected to public, yes.
It is?
Oh, the gate-
Okay.
that's-
Correct. The gatehouse is, which is the same, that 1 acre triangle, which we're gonna put in the building. Right. That gatehouse already has a connection. However, that That line is probably too small for what we need. We determined we need a 6-inch lateral line to the main.
I have a note on that.
Yeah, so we're going to connect to the main with a 6-inch line, but the gatehouse is currently connected with a 4-inch line to the main, yes.
Because I looked at the plan, and typically when we get a plan, the engineer will point out where drain fields are.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at the plan and didn't see that. It was sort of confusing as to if we'd have a drain field.
We have there's two BMPs that our civil engineer has developed on site to deal with the stormwater. Is that what you're asking about?
No, sewer.
Okay. Oh, sewer. Oh,
Sure.
yeah. No, there's no drain field down there. Right?
You're not building on top of a drain field on any of this,
No.
because it's on public sewer,
Drain field for,
septic.
There's no septic down there. It's on
septic.
public.
so it's public.
Okay.
Yep.
That was
Was
confusing.
it one
when I
time?
looked at
There was
the
at one
plan.
time, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. There's no drain field in that location. Yeah. We're not building on a drain field.
And you mentioned the stormwater issue. How is that being handled on the new triangular piece for you?
So, yeah, there's two BMPs. In fact, I think, is Tim Deal on the call? Our civil engineer is on the call, so he could answer that question for you.
He's muted right now.
Okay.
Because there's no citation on the sketch about any detention or retention of water.
So Tim, why don't you answer that
To
question?
interject. Good evening, my name's Timothy Deal.
Hello.
I'm the Coffins engineer from this project. I'm president of HD Engineering Solutions, Inc., located in Camp Hill, PA. Thank you for having this Zoom call. You saved me a good bit of time on the road today. So anyway, on sheet 7 of 12, it shows both the grading configurations and utility configurations. So everything as it stands today from that little triangular parcel, which is separated by Old Bullsburg Road, flows into the existing stream, which is an unnamed tributary of Spring Creek.
A little bit to the left of that side. Okay.
Yeah, that's on the other side of the little nexus there of the corner at the L at Old Bullsburg Road. So we're creating a surface rain garden BMP that'll collect the lion's share of new impervious coverage, including the building, parking area to the back, in order to meet some specific criteria of the ordinance. We also had to create a subsurface infiltration trench that will collect the neck of the driveway connection with Old Bullsburg Road and a little bit of the impervious coverage in that parking lot area, collected via a trench drain. They'll be connected, each of these BMPs will be connected to separate inlets, but they'll eventually converge at the same point. So with discussion with the township engineer, we analyzed this as one drainage point, and we're confident that we have met all the stormwater management regulations with its design. We're happy to answer any questions.
Gary's fine with that?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, well, now that you've explained the sewer system, I understand better, because otherwise it concerned me about how you're gonna put a sewer system into that small piece of property.
Understood.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I was clear about that too.
Oh, just, yeah.
Yeah, just for clarification's sake, we did submit, and one of our other waivers does deal with the size of the plan. We did a very detailed survey for the 1 acre, one plus or minus 1 acre tract where all the development is, and relied on some aerial and LiDAR information to collect for the enlarged plan. The enlarged plan does show the locations of the sewer drainage facilities, the private on-lot septic systems. The smaller versions do not. They just show, since they are not on septic, they show the connection to the proposed tap room. Again, that's on sheet 7 of 12, shows the proposed sanitary sewer connection.
Your comment, it says, one waiver request is officially been withdrawn. Is that something that that's not part of this discussion tonight? Okay. Further comments?
No, I'm happy with this. I'd like, let's get through this, and I have a couple of questions for you. Okay.
Go.
Nothing to do with this, though.
Oh, okay. Further discussion, Frank?
Yes, if there's no further discussion. Before there's further, I would like to amend my motion to include part one of that, to approve the waivers in addition to part two, which was to consider or to approve the plan. So I'd like to amend my motion to include the waivers.
Okay. And you made the second, you agree with that? Okay. We do vote on that amendment. Everyone in favor of that amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Further questions?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple of questions. Just, not for my information, but for general public's information that I've heard. You're meeting all the requirements for the township with this, I assume, including parking? Okay. And the other thing you brought up, you are intending having some live entertainment, music?
That's really undecided at this point. That's
Okay.
certainly not a part or integral to our business.
But when you do, you realize you have to meet all of our requirements for whatever it is for.
Yes.
Or do you have to go through the LCB?
The PLCB?
PLCB?
Yes, we do need to get permitting from them,
Okay.
yep.
So you will have meet all the requirements also?
That's correct. Yep.
I assumed that. I just wanted to get
Yeah, okay,
affirmation from you.
great, thank you.
Same kind of thing we do with the ski slope.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we do it a little differently at ski
but-
slope.
But
Will that fall under his also? Not automatically, yeah?
So it depends. No, the exemption that we get from the LCB is just for Tussey Mountain so that they can have outdoor amplified sound. The LCB, I was looking today because of the next item on our agenda, but the LCB exempted limited wineries from the outdoor amplified sound exemption, and I'm not sure if they did the same for small batch breweries. I just saw where in 2019 they did the wineries, and they've created a couple different classes of licenses under some other things. So I think in Ferguson Township, I believe their manager told me the cidery out there falls under the outdoor amplified sound issue because they have a liquor license, and Ferguson Township does an exemption for them as well. So when we do it for Tussey Mountain, what we do, we've done it since 2006 or 7. We go out, and now they give us 5 years, but basically you fall under our special events ordinance, and you have to have your outdoor amplified sound off at a certain time during the week and also on the weekends. And then State College Police enforces that for us. And we've had very few problems since we've been getting those exemptions with Tussey. But there is a very formal process, and there's a hearing, and the judge comes up from
You may or may not have to
Harrisburg.
go through that, right?
Yeah.
Music or?
It's outdoor amplified sound.
outdoor live music,
And
okay.
that's under the liquor code. So
Okay.
that's under Pennsylvania law.
Well, the only thing is that State College Police enforce it, and it's under disorderly conduct rather than noise, yeah. So I assume if your music gets loud enough to wake up your neighbors, it's probably pretty loud, right? Okay.
Okay. Further discussion? We have a motion and a second?
You voted on the amendment. You
Yeah,
didn't
we
vote on the
voted on
motion.
the amendment. We included,
I included the amendment, it was an amendment, it was a.
and we approved that.
I included the part.
Now we're voting on the original
Oh,
recommendation that's in the agenda. So
Okay.
all in favor of accepting that recommendation, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Got it.
Thank you so much for your time tonight, appreciate it.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, the Agritainment Regulations, there is no motion, this is a discussion item, so we will discuss. Amy, you kicking off, and then
Yeah, I'll start.
whoever else?
So at last month's joint meeting with the Planning Commission, the board heard from residents and farmers who expressed a desire to see the proposed agritainment regulations revised to allow agritainment operations on arterial streets. They also asked for flexibility in what agritainment operations would be allowed in the township. We spent some time researching agritainment regulations from other areas in the state and reviewing our proposed regulations with an eye on how they could be simplified and also achieve the goals that we have for the rural zoning update. So we're proposing several changes, and then we have 2 policy level questions for you related to agritainment. And I just want to say that tonight our intent is just to discuss the agritainment and to leave the mapping for another another meeting. We're trying to take this in little chunks to bite off and see if we can get some consensus moving forward. So the proposed regulations, we're proposing to change the definition of agritainment to activities conducted on and accessory to a working agricultural operation and offered to the public or to invited groups for the purpose of recreation, education, or active involvement in the agricultural operation. These activities must be directly related to agricultural or natural resources and incidental to the agricultural operation. We're proposing that we allow agritainment in the proposed rural residential, agricultural, and natural areas districts. We're proposing deleting the arterial street language, and then to address possible traffic concerns, we would add language that prohibits parking in the right-of-way of a public street, so that would be no on-street parking on a public street. Deleting the square footage requirement for structures related to agritainment, deleting the driveway access requirements. And we did put in the packet, and we also sent out to some of the farmers in the township a marked up document that shows the language that we originally had and then what we were proposing to change it to. We do have 2 policy level questions for the board that need to be addressed, and the first pertains to the outdoor amplified sound. Our proposed regulations do not allow any outdoor amplified sound, and this was proposed to limit the impacts that agritainment activities would have on neighboring properties. We were unsure what outdoor amplified sound would be customary to an agritainment or an agricultural operation, since we didn't really think about concerts or weddings or other things being allowed as agritainment. The Planning Commission had also expressed a concern about allowing the outdoor amplified sound, as they were concerned about how it would impact neighbors. And one of the gentlemen on the Planning Commission had commented that he would like to see us step into agritainment. And so, you know, we always say when we write regulations, we like to write the best regulations we can, but we like to also be flexible that we can change them if we need to. So if we wrote this now and didn't include outdoor amplified sound, but then we found there was a need for it in the future, or we found it wasn't, agritainment was very well received, we could change that ordinance in the future, and that's not to say that that wouldn't happen. And I knew somebody had brought up the question about wineries. The wineries fall under the Pennsylvania Liquor Code. The Pennsylvania Liquor Code prohibits outdoor amplified sound, but in 2019 they passed an exemption for limited wineries that allows a limited winery to have no more than 75 decibel levels at their property line, and it sets the hours from 10 to 10 on the weekends and 10 to 8 during the week for outdoor amplified sound. So they're a little bit different. As we mentioned before, Tussey Mountain falls under that because they have they have concerts and things, and they have a liquor license, so they have to get an exemption through the state. So, in looking at the outdoor amplified sound, if the board were to choose to decide that they would like to allow that, we think you should set some limits. Our special events ordinance right now, which is what Tussey follows, sets a limit of the sound has to be off between 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11:30 on the weekend. So we think maybe if you're going to pursue that, you should think about that. And then the second policy question is how we want to handle the more commercial type activities, which are weddings, retreats, concerts, stuff that isn't actually incidental to the farming operation. This wouldn't be a hayride. A hayride is certainly incidental to a farming operation. Someone's coming out to experience the farm. Some of you might remember, because most of you were on the board, when we talked about the farm winery regulations back in 2011, 2012, we had this very similar discussion, and the language in that ordinance is special events related to wine tasting, wine making, and instruction are permitted. Such events shall meet all applicable requirements for sewage disposal, water supply, and restroom facilities. Corporate retreats, weddings, and other events are not directly related to wine tasting, wine making, or wine instruction are not permitted. So the question is, how far do we want to go with this? Because do we want to allow more commercial type activities, understanding that agritainment could also still mean there could still be special events as long as they met our special events ordinance out there. So Tate Farms years ago had a solstice festival that they did under our special events registration process. So there's still an opportunity for that. There's still an opportunity if someone is having, a hayride or a U-Pick thing and they wanted to have a food truck to come out, as long as they met our regulations for transient retail merchants and it's incidental to what's going on the farm, that would still be okay. So that's sort of where we're at. That's sort of what we've been thinking about, and we wanted to get some feedback. The thought process is the Planning Commission needs to get a crack at refining language next week if you guys are okay with what we're proposing and we get some answers. And then we can come back and talk about the rest of this next month, which is the mapping piece of it and some of the other loose ends that people have brought up, make sure we're tight with everything in the language.
Okay, folks, Comment? Going once? Yeah,
Yeah.
fine, yeah.
Can you come to the podium, please?
Podium. Don't be bashful.
Rebecca Lingrich, I think there are probably other people here who have more experience and will want to say more. I appreciate what you've done, and I appreciate that you gave us the opportunity, some of us farmers, to look. Rebecca Lingrich, sorry. It's a little hard to understand with this. I appreciate that you gave us, just pull it down? Okay. Okay, I'm not sick. Anyway, but I'm trying to be respectful and careful. I appreciate that you all gave us a chance to look at what you all were working on so that we could come informed, and the things that the township staff have worked on I think are very workable and helpful. I would like to see you consider the amplified sound. Just a very simple thing that comes to my mind is someone has a Christmas tree farm and they want to have some Christmas music while, around where you're cutting the tree or whatever. There's a lot of things that people might want to do that are fairly simple. Another thought is safety. The agritainment is required to be on a 10-acre parcel. So if you had a reason that you need to talk to a group of people over 10 acres or more, it would be good to have a microphone. And I know when I talked to you once before, one of you said, oh, it's okay to have a bullhorn or whatever, but with the strict no amplified sound, you're cutting off some things that actually could be very practically important. So that's one thing. And then, I don't know, I sent an email. There's one other thing that you should think about that's the non-arterial, arterial spot.
Yeah, so I think in your email, you had a question on the roadside farm.
Farm stand, yeah.
Right, so the way the ordinance reads is you can have a roadside farm stand on any agricultural property in any of the districts that we allow ag. It was just that if you want to sell non-ag commodities, which is not protected by the right to farm law, that was only allowed on arterial streets. So if you want to sell things that aren't grown on a farm, like t-shirts and keychains and jewelry and things like that, those were the things that were the planning commission limited to just properties that had arterial frontage and access.
Okay, but what we're trying to do, you're using those same things for the agritainment. And what we're trying to do is make it fair that if you're on a non-arterial street and doing agritainment, you have the same opportunities as somebody who's on an arterial street. And with that one line there, you have said that the people on arterial streets can have any kind of market there if they choose to with their agritainment, whereas and I think someone talked the last time about selling a t-shirt or whatever with your farm name on it or something like that, whereas the people on non-arterial cannot do that. So I would just like to see you make things, again, the same for arterial and non-arterial. The state law, there is state law about farm stands, and I know people here can talk to that even more than I can, but there's a lot of regulations that have to be met anyway by anyone doing a farm stand. And I don't feel like we need to be trying to differentiate a non-arterial farm stand from an arterial farm stand as far as what's allowed.
Agree.
And that's my two things, and you've got a letter anyway.
Anybody else? Ma'am?
Yeah, just a couple comments.
Identify yourself.
I'm sorry, Cindy Harding. And I may, once I hear what you guys have to say, maybe I'll have something else to offer, but I would like to agree with Rebecca. I don't know why you would distinguish between farms on this street and farms on this street. That makes no sense. And I would wager that's some kind of discrimination. That doesn't seem fair in any way. And if this farm wants to sell farm t-shirts and that farm wants to sell farm t-shirts, why is it okay for this one but not that one? I don't see any rationale for that.
I don't think the issue is so much a farm t-shirt. I think the issue is someone who's going to use part of their roadside farm stand to sell jewelry and tchotchke and other things that are completely unrelated to the farm and that they're bringing in, and that's bringing more traffic in. Again, it goes back to the issue with the agritainment, right? So you can, have a roadside farm stand, and if, you know, I'll use the example from The Office, if anybody watches The Office, Schrut's Beet Farm, if you want to sell your, you know, that's your farm t-shirt, I don't think we have a problem with that because that's related to the farm. It's more the other stuff that might bring in, and, you know, when we were looking at this stuff way back when, looking at Route 322, Route 45, those are places that can necessarily handle more of the traffic than, say, Brush Valley Road or Linden Hall Road, and that's it. It's just trying to limit the amount of non-farm related stuff that might bring in more traffic. That's all. It's not a discriminatory thing.
That sounds good on paper, but it's kind of a slippery slope to make those to try and make those distinctions and have it be fair. I'm just cautioning you. I think that, like you said, it's a very slippery slope. That's my first comment. My second one is about the amplified sound thing. If we're going to allow any other business in the township to follow the amplified sound rules, that it's okay for them to use amplified sound, why is that not okay for a farm? We're just businesses like other businesses, so I'm not sure why there's a distinction. If it's okay for the winery or for the brewery, the new brew pub that's going to open to have amplified sound, or the People's Choice Festival to have amplified sound, why would that not be okay for us to have that?
So those are all great examples of state regulations. The military museum property is a state property. It doesn't fall under our regulations. The wineries in the state of Pennsylvania, anything with a liquor license falls under the Pennsylvania Liquor Code. The outdoor amplified sound is dictated by the Pennsylvania Liquor Code, not by Harris Township. The only thing that we have that dictates what you can do in terms of outdoor amplified sound is in our special events registration process. So if someone is proposing a special event, and Todd can speak to this better than I can because he reviews them, but we identify in the special event regulations, a special event in the township has outdoor amplified sound and or 500 or more people on it, and Todd can answer the rest of that. But that's the differentiation. It's not by business. We don't have anything to do with the liquor code.
Okay, but I'm just wondering why, if that's allowed, using the special events permission form, whatever you want to call it, why do we have to specify something different in this ordinance?
So we're not specifying something different because these agritainment activities are not special events. They're incidental to the agricultural operation, so they don't have to go through the special event process, which is what we heard last month. At last month's meeting was we wanted something that was easier for the person who owns the farm who wants to do the activities.
Right, okay.
So Mr. Immel has his goat yoga. He wouldn't have to register every goat yoga event that he has because it's incidental to the goat farm that he's operating.
But he would not be allowed to use amplified sound.
That's a discussion point for the Board of
Okay.
Supervisors that they need to decide.
Okay.
And again, we have framework if they want to go that way, but they need to decide what they want to do.
Okay. I question, thank you for the clarification. And my other comment is about the other, what you're calling more commercial events that are not necessarily incidental to a farm operation, like concerts, weddings, retreats. You use those examples. I guess I would plead with the supervisors not to disallow those activities. You're calling them more commercial activities because you don't see them as relevant to a farm enterprise. But I would like to make the case that those of us who live on farms, we don't know what our business model is going to look like next week, next year, in 5 years. And we need to be able to adapt. Like I said, we may have to go down that kind of road to keep our farms sustainable. And that might mean maybe we do 3 retreats a summer, or we do 5 weddings a year. It's just something that we can do that can supplement our farm income, but it doesn't necessarily make us wedding farmers, for example, or retreat farmers, okay? But if you make this language very restrictive or too restrictive, you are kind of prohibiting us from adapting to the market. And we don't know what that's going to look like. Who knew that, small batch beer pubs were going to be such a thing, or that hard cider? We didn't know that, but being able to adapt to those kinds of changing market trends is really important for us to be able to do.
My concern there would be the creature comfort issue with respect to restrooms.
Okay.
And having available capacity,
That's not a problem.
for however many people you need to use a job Johnny that's brought in, those kind of logistical issues.
There's
Better not have a
all,
wedding without a job, Johnny. Better not have a wedding without a job, Johnny.
Well, that's it, that's the point.
that's a market in and of itself.
Yeah.
I mean, you can rent a little trailer that has air conditioning and music and a regular vanity and lights. It's not a job, Johnny. That's a thing. So that's, providing restroom facilities is not a problem and not a reason to limit that opportunity for farmers by any stretch.
Well, I don't see it as a limit as much as something we need to make sure is happening.
Well, I don't think anybody, I mean, I guess, but at some point you're micromanaging, because I don't think anybody is going to host a wedding and not provide toilet facilities. But that would be irresponsible at the very least.
Just talk to the mother of the bride.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Just talk to the mother of the bride one
Exactly.
time.
So, I mean, you don't micromanage that we provide water for guests who are visiting in the summer when it's hot. So, I mean, at some point, it just gets to be silliness. Okay, but as a farm owner in the township, I would like to make the case that supervisors, please, don't restrict us from being able to adapt to the changing market. We don't know what our business model is going to look like going forward. And if you want us to be around in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, that's a long time. And I appreciate what Amy says, that you can write this ordinance now and we can always change it. Yeah, I don't think that any of us have had very much success with that sort of endeavor. Why do that? Why set all these restrictions now, over-restrict, micromanage, when it's not necessary? I would make the case that, I hate to say wait till there's a problem and then let's address it, but right now you're trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. And so why create one? Okay, thank you.
Others?
Yeah, I'll make a couple comments. Michael Emmel, thank you very much, staff, for putting this together. I think you've done a wonderful job. I want to be sure that we recognize these guys and the board for listening to all of us that came here at the public hearing. I think it's very commendable that you did that. And I really do mean that. I think I want to be sure that we do that. I mean, it seems like we always come here to complain, and certainly I've probably been one of those. But I want to be sure that you do know that us in the community do certainly appreciate what you've done here. I think you've taken a big step to help us farmers and move into this agritainment. And I know it's kind of new, and it's something that's really only been done at a few places, and mostly in Harris Township, by the way. I think the only two farms that I know that are doing it in Center County. There may be others, but I just don't know about them. I guess maybe then, in addition to that, my question would be, what's the difference between agritainment and agribusiness? Because as I listen to Rebecca and Cindy speak, it sounds as if there's some crossover. Is there two different terms? Are there two different entities? Are they two different operations? Did you guys in your research run into any, verbiage that discussed agritainment / agribusiness, and were there any differences between those? Maybe Mark, you.
I would say that there's no real definitions of anything out there that have been adopted across the spectrum.
Okay.
Agribusiness I've seen referred to like butcher shops and things like that are related to farming, but they're not necessarily farming on site in some zoning ordinances, but everybody's zoning ordinances are different.
Okay.
So I think the agritainment was the term that the Planning Commission chose to go with as they were looking to try to expand and allow these uses.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's a matter of defining more refined what that means to the township.
So they would be kind of more commercial type things, is what maybe you saw. I didn't do a lot of research on it. It's more of a question than anything.
Yeah, it's all over the board. We looked
Okay.
at we looked at an ordinance from Upper Macungie Township, which is in the Lehigh Valley, and
Okay.
Upper Macungie defines new agritainment businesses and old agritainment businesses. And if you want to split a bunch of hairs, they've done a great job of doing that.
Wow.
And Lancaster County, Lancaster County has put together a guide, which we found pretty helpful because it's like an if-then statement. If you have this regulation as a municipality, then you could do this. If you don't have this regulation, you can't do that.
Wow.
And it is pretty helpful, but they use agritourism. They don't use agritainment. So
Right.
there's no one gold standard for what the actual verbiage is.
Yeah, and that's a great term. So I've heard that term as well, agritourism.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe as you continue on this path, does it limit, and, I'm going to go back to Cindy's point, is if someone's doing, agritourism, like, for example, we have B&Bs and we market them as farm stays, what would that be? Is that agritourism? Is that agritainment? I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing that all out there. Is there a, and I'm assuming there just isn't. It's a little confusing.
Yeah.
And I would also echo maybe Rebecca's point and Cindy's point to the board that, some limited form of amplified sound might be helpful. From my own personal perspective, I'm not interested in doing large-scale events, and I've made that comment many times, and have host big bands and things like that. But if someone had a microphone and a little speaker to a group of people, might be extremely helpful. Maybe that's not what you're saying you can't do. Maybe you're saying that doesn't fall under amplified sound. I don't know. But I think I would echo a little bit of that, what Rebecca and Cindy were saying on that as well. And then with the weddings, what happens with those kind of things? I know some areas, Potter Township, they have one over there, it was a General Potter farm. They do weddings. It's a farm that's basically nothing but weddings, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know that they have animals. They have no animals. Yeah. Now, see, I that's not my interest, and so from my perspective, I'm strictly involving stuff with my animals and the environment there. But just was throwing that out there. But anyways, thank you guys very much for your work.
We use the General Potter Park to find out his wedding.
Okay.
Purely the building.
Purely the building. So it's just basically you're renting, it's a commercial building that they're just renting for
You're
weddings.
indoors. Well, the weather was warm, so we were indoors and outdoors, but we're basically indoors.
Right. So it was more for the atmosphere, I guess, of being in a barn. But it was more of a commercial, it's a commercial entity then, is what pretty much.
General Potter was a furniture store before it was a wedding.
Oh, it was?
Been around a long time, so.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Anyways, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others? Comments?
Wait.
Look, Cindy, we'll get Cindy and,
Candy Wasson.
and your good ice cream.
Yeah. I really don't have anything to input on what you're doing here. The only thing I want to bring up is, first off, I do not want to have weddings at my farm. The only weddings I have there are my children, and I have enough of them. And I think I'm allowed to have my children's weddings there. But right now, Pennsylvania Farm Bureau is working on some legislation as far as wedding barns on active farms. What they're trying to do is they're looking at the code and trying to adapt it that it's easier for a farmer to have weddings, because it has become, it's known that farming is not in the best positions right now, and farmers are striving to find different ways to make money. They're not asking to be exempt of the code. They're just trying to bring it in line that a farmer can afford to do it if necessary to do it on their farm. So I'm just asking that you might want to look into that legislation that Pennsylvania Farm Bureau is working on right now. They've been working on it for, I think, the last year or so. They just recently passed the liability law, as you saw that. And Pennsylvania Farm Bureau was really big behind that, and I appreciate everything they've done on that. It's not exempting us from liability, it's just making us a little less liable for the nuisance laws. I mean, if we're neglect, we're going to get sued. But I don't know if you're familiar with the law, but you have to have people recognize the fact that they are there and that there are certain dangers to a farm. But you have to do it by either having it acknowledged on your ticket, you have to have signs out. You're not without, you're not exempt. You're not exempt. And they're working on the same type of thing with the wedding barns. And like I said, I'm not looking to get in that business. I live right beside the barn that I built, and I don't want that right next door. Like I said, it's for my children. They can do it if they want to do it there, but not me. But look into that with the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau before you make any decisions on that. Like I said, they're just trying to alleviate things a little bit for the farmer, because there are people that really need a second income stream. Yeah. So, okay.
Good ice cream. Harvey?
One quick comment, and listening to Rebecca and Cindy, and I'm not a farmer, nor do I plan on being one. I really urge the supervisors not to make this overly restrictive, because you know what it's like to go back and change an ordinance. It's hard enough to get one passed. It seems a whole lot better if you're less restrictive, and then if there's an issue, you deal with the problem. As Cindy said, you're trying to solve all the problems, but there isn't any yet right now, so I strongly urge you to do that.
Discussion by the board? Go around the horn.
Okay, I'll go first. First thing, comment I would make is just a couple grammatical things. On the red section there of the Ag Entertainment Enterprise, where you come down there, it says these activities must be directly related. We want to give this an impression that we're for it. I think you should change that must to a should. Anytime we put must in something, we're sounding like, we're the heavy hand of the world. You're going to do it this way or else. So I'd say let's just put should in there. And the other little grammatical thing I would like to do is take the Harris Township dictionary when it comes to ag properties, and let's get rid of arterial street. Just take it out of our dictionary. Let's not put it in anywhere. I think we just get rid of arterial streets, because every time we try to put it in this ordinance, we get a bunch of, pushback because it is wrong. So I'd say let's just get rid of arterial streets. Just the little thing you say there about no on-street parking and stuff, I think we're fine there. Because, let's face it, farms have a lot of land. They can put a lot of parking in. I would be more comfortable with a farm doing a thing and providing parking than having somebody that has maybe 10 acres in their house and a garage trying to put that many people in, because there you would probably have people on the streets. But anyway, that's the two things that I want to do there. A couple other things. I really like the idea that the ladies were talking about, that we've got to make this fair for all of them. We can't, I think the agribusiness should have the same language about the arterial streets and everything in it, because what's the difference between this business or entertainment? You're coming to the farm, you're going to buy something, you're going to do something. Let's just make sure it's the same on both of them, that we can do the things. And I think we ought to have a lot of like languages when it comes to the arterial streets and those things. And finally, a couple things. The one thing that, and we've said it a lot of times here, the one thing that come up to me is, what if a farmer wants to do a car show? Well, by what I read here, he can't. But he can do it under special events. So I think I would like to have something in there in this ordinance that would say, any activity that is not ag-related will be permitted under the Township Special Event Ordinance. I think that needs to be in there to clarify that if they want to do something other than something that's ag-related, they can do it. But we have an ordinance that they have to come in and apply for a special permit, for the special event. And I think that language needs to be in there.
Maybe permitted.
What's that?
Maybe permitted.
Maybe permitted, I'm sorry. Anyway.
No rocket launches.
No rocket launchers. No astronaut farmers. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to do to everybody was at Friday night's Township dinner, which was really good, and if those were there, it was a very nice event. I had several of the Planning Commission people come up to me and say, we don't want to debate this anymore. We want direction from the board. So I think tonight, when we finish all this and we put everything together, we send them the direction. This is what we want. We don't want to go send it back down and come up with other things we've got to look at. I think we need to send them direction and say, this is what the board wants to pass. So you guys look at it and that's it. I don't think we want them debating it. That's my point.
That's an interesting point.
And by the way, what they said, we can fix anything. We can make this thing really liberal and we can fix it later. But I don't believe we make it so restrictive. We got to try to, it's easier to put something in than take it out. So we can fix it later. Let's make it real liberal. Let them see, let's take this car out for a spin and see what happens. And if we have to come back and put new tires on it, we'll come back and put new tires on it.
If you can't do an old car show,
What's that?
If you can't do an old car show.
There you go.
Can you do an old tractor show?
Whatever, you know.
I come from Illinois farm country, and they're very, very big.
And by the way,
and old tractors.
by the way, I think you could stretch it and stretch it around, that you could make the point that marriage is a farm operation. So that's just something, that's a general comment.
Okay, Nigel, thank you, Frank.
Yeah, I agree with, I was gonna say this, I was gonna agree with Frank on the get rid of the arterial on Collector Street thing. I mentioned something in a previous meeting that, it'll be self-regulating, pretty much, because somebody's, anyway, that's obvious. But, yeah, off-street parking only, that makes sense. And I did want to just, the technical definition of agribusiness would be corporate-owned farms. That's what I think of when I see it, and if you Google it, that's what you're going to find, I bet. So, Agritainment enterprise is what we're talking about here, so let's just get agribusiness out of it. That has nothing to do with it. Yeah, less restrictive. We want to give people the opportunities to keep their farms going, however they can do it. Obviously, within reason, special events, sure. If you want to have a car show, you're going to need a lot of land to do it. So that's going to be self-regulating. You're not going to get that on a 10, 11 acre farm really to have enough space, to have, you're not having people parking in your cornfields, for example. That kind of thing doesn't work. So I think let's, be pretty liberal about it and see how it all works out.
We're getting close.
Bud?
In terms of parking on public streets, I just want to make sure that we're talking about parking on public streets in rural residential and agricultural zones.
And natural districts.
Okay. In other words, the parking out here is a public street, but that's still good.
Yeah, that's still
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure I can park in front of my house. So in terms of the sound requirement, the next two items, I kind of think that I realize the LCB has a lot to say about what happens with wineries, but I kind of see treating, I see wineries as agriculture, and I see kind of treating our farms the same way we're treating the wineries. So if we allow the wineries to have amplified sound, we ought to allow the agricultural people to have amplified sound, subject to the same restrictions of our requirements, and subject to the same restrictions that if the state college police come down and say, you're way too loud, you're a nuisance for your neighbors, then you're subject to enforcement based on that. I think that's just reasonable. That should be applied. Hell, that should be applied to me. I can have a party in my backyard with amplified music. If I'm annoying my neighbors, they can call the police and they'll come and talk to me.
Well, invite them, then you wouldn't have that problem. So,
yeah. And I would say the same thing kind of relative to special events. Let's treat them the same way that we treat the wineries. And we have, in terms of sewage disposal, water supply, and restroom facilities, those are existing constraints. That's not something we're making up. We're just saying we want to enforce what is already there and make it clear that we're not allowing exceptions to existing constraints that are placed upon farm operations or agritainment or whatever term we're going to use. So I think, like I said, I think overall my general philosophy is let's treat farms the same way we're treating the wineries.
So can I just ask a question?
Sure.
So if I'm hearing the outdoor amplified sound you'd like to allow, and I'm hearing maybe we would use the framework of what we have in the special events registration, which is the 10:30, is it 10:30 during the week, 11:30 on the weekends? Yeah. So the same hours, and then have State College Borough Police enforce that. On the commercial activities, that's my question, because right now we don't allow weddings, corporate retreats, and other commercial type activities on the farm wineries. They can have special events following our special events regulation.
Wineries cannot have a wedding?
It's written, the way it's written into our ordinance now, no. So that's what I'm asking the question, because that's where we need a little bit of,
What if a winery, so you're saying if a winery wants to have a wedding, they gotta do a special event request?
no.
They can't have a wedding.
What? I've been to a lot of weddings at wineries.
So when we worked on the farm winery ordinance, and again, this was like 2011, 2012 timeframe, and at that time, we only had one winery in the township. And we were having an issue with that particular winery was doing a lot of events that had nothing to do with the wine. They were hosting department dinners at Penn State, other things, and it's up a road that is not a paved road.
They had neighbor problems.
Yeah, they had neighbor problems, and it's up a chip sealed road.
Yes.
And that's why we spent a considerable amount of time looking for a way that a farm winery, which is intended to be in an ag district or rural area, wasn't going to be overtaxing in terms of it's that fine line between the commercial stuff and the not commercial stuff. Because a lot of the wineries in Pennsylvania, we've done a lot of research on this stuff. A lot of the wineries in Pennsylvania at the time when we were looking at it, they're located in commercial zoning districts or industrial zoning districts. So they're doing things that are perfectly okay because they're in areas that are zoned for that and the neighbors are okay with that. The winery, Mountain Nittany Winery at the time, had farmers all around it, and one gentleman was raising cattle and was having a lot of issues because it was a lot of disruption to his operation and to his steer and cattle or whatever. So that's why we looked at it that way. So, and I am interested to look up this legislation that Candy mentioned because that could make all of this moot. If the state does something that says wedding barns are allowed, we can't supersede state law. So that makes a lot of this moot.
It's not that they're allowing it. What they're saying is that existing structures on farms will not have to be brought up to.
Oh, the code.
We won't need a sprinkler system.
Yeah,
Okay.
we won't need the sprinkler systems, we won't need this, we won't need that. It's making it easier for that farmer to have that wedding there on the farm.
Okay, perfect.
If the barn is old enough, before 1990 something. So it's a
It doesn't have to
pretty
be
new barn.
ADA compliant, but all of those kinds of things, which can be regulatory obstacles for
Sure.
barns.
Sure.
So.
Let's keep going, Bud.
My turn. I'm glad everybody's sitting.
Let me just wrap up, please.
Oh, go ahead.
If we're going to allow wineries on if we're going to allow wineries on, if we're going to allow weddings on agricultural properties, we ought to allow them on wineries.
Okay, so that's.
I want to treat them the same. That's my point. We can, whichever way we go, but I want to treat them the same.
You're happy either way, but do them equally.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, that's it.
Bud?
Well, the wedding, that was an anomaly where that situation was. That is where the winery is and the neighbors, and they threatened to shoot him on the way by or whatever. I'm glad I'm last because I agree with what everybody said so far. I guess I'm the one that, it sounds to me like we have a unanimous or almost unanimous decision on this thing. Agriculture is a business, and like any business, there's too damn many restrictions on every business these days. Every time you turn around, it's tough to run a business, and farming is as much a business as General Motors is. So, and I myself wondered about the weddings and the amplified sound and the whole thing like that. I mean, we have a lot of insurance policies in place. As Bruce said, if the noise is too loud, the police can cite you for disorderly conduct. We have that in place already. So I don't necessarily see why any of these restrictions need to be put on that. Nobody's going to park. I don't think anybody's going to park Bailey Lane shut. I don't see that happening. So, or Branch Road. I don't see Branch Road being parked shut. So I don't. There's an issue there at all. We're covered with all that. The only thing that they talked about commercial sales. That may be a little bit of a bailiwick because if someone has some farm ag land and they want to start selling used cars, that may be an issue there. But as far as anything that's related to making money with their business, I don't see a problem with that. So pretty much agree with everybody else. Let's just back off and let farmers be farmers and let business people be business people. That's the same thing.
And farmers can sell used farm equipment, right, Don?
Yeah.
Or collect them in your beautiful barns, so.
You're selling guns pretty soon.
I'm in agreement. You pretty well hit everything I've talked about.
Everybody's happy.
I'm looking at the 5 changes that were talked about, the square footage, the driveway access requirement. That's fine.
I have another question.
Sure.
Just occurred to me. So on ag property, we're allowing landscape businesses already. Are they going to be subject to the exact same things? Are they going to be able to do all these things that farms are going to be able to do if we? Well, okay, we have a landscape business that's on more than 10 acres, I bet, he's got. The one, you know the one I'm talking about. Let's not get into details. So are they going to be able to do anything that any farm operation can do for agribusiness? I know, it's like, that may be, it's something to think about, because.
What's the difference between if it's a farmer or a landscape business?
Yeah,
What's the difference?
I was going to say, back in 2012, the board did adopt an ordinance to allow landscape contractor businesses, and you adopted a whole set of regulations just for that business model. And there's a specific definition that you created just for landscape contractor businesses, so.
Okay, so that would be separate.
Yeah, because they don't need to have any farm operation whatsoever on their property. They can simply just have mulch storage and vehicles and then go out off-site to do landscaping.
We don't allow them to have weddings.
On a mulch
Barn
pile.
is a big enough barn to do that.
I mean,
The one barn's gone, so.
so were they permitted to farm any of their land as a landscape contractor business?
I would think if you have 10 acres in the agricultural zoning district, you can farm.
Plant trees is a cash crop.
Right, well, I mean, they are allowed to plant their own trees, aren't they?
Yeah.
They can,
yeah, they could.
They don't
Yeah, I
have
don't think
to,
they
but they
do.
can.
Right.
And the commercial tree growing operation on the Coon property, growing a lot of
So
really
what are we
nice
gonna do
trees.
now? What are we gonna do now? Where are we?
Okay, so what I heard is you're okay with the changes to the language that we proposed. You really want to get rid of arterial street language when it comes to the roadside farm stand, I think is what we heard. I think that was the last place it was left. And then you're okay with outdoor amplified sound, and you'd like to follow, I believe I'm hearing, the special event regulation in terms of the sound, the hours for the sound. The commercial events, it sounds like we're okay maybe with weddings, but I think we need to do a little more research on that, because you would like whatever we allow in the ag business to also be allowed
carry both
for the
ways.
wineries. So,
So what's the difference between a wedding or a tent revival?
oh, good Lord.
What?
Well, I mean, you're like, I'm not sure why we don't like weddings on, but that's
I'm
beside.
not against a wedding.
Well, okay, so say again what you just said.
So I think we need to do a little more research on, because, again, I don't know that weddings are the devil necessarily. It's kicking open the door for the purely commercial stuff. And it sounds like we want to allow the same stuff for the farm wineries that we allow for the Agritainment ag farm businesses, which makes a lot of sense. So we need to look at some language there and see what we can come up with.
I guess simple question. I have a simple question. What are we worried these farmers are gonna do to us?
It's not to
Well,
us.
yeah, it is.
It is the disruption with the traffic and the noise and the septic systems. And that was, honestly,
You farmers are getting awful, I'm telling you.
that's what the discussion point started with the farm wineries.
Yeah, could be, I don't know.
I have one question.
Maybe you have it, Dan, you have
I think
it.
it is, or Todd. On this ordinance, when we looked at the conservation design, didn't we say, like, if a farmer was gonna sell his farm and he wanted to develop, on the commercial end, isn't there a restriction on how much of the land they can use for a commercial use if they're going out of the ag business?
I don't think we have any I mean, on the.
In other words, if I'm gonna sell a farm.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a 100-acre farm, and I'm gonna sell it. Can I put a 100-acre factory on there?
Well, I don't think that our ag district permits factories. I mean, certainly in theory, you could have perhaps a factory that's related to processing agricultural products produced on site. But no, I don't think that you would be able to put a business, because we don't allow that. We currently don't.
Solar farm, can I put a 100-acre solar farm in?
Currently-
Or can I put, like, is it 10% or 20%?
We don't
I thought
curr-
there was a restriction on the commercial part of this when I read it.
We don't allow a commercial solar farm as a use in our ag district, or any of our rural districts for that matter. That would essentially be a power plant. We don't allow those right now.
I guess it is a power plant. Good analogy.
Introduce yourself.
Jim Rosenberger. I have land out in,
Hey.
and we've had 2 weddings and about 10 square dances. Both had some live music. I didn't even know I might have to have a permit, but I think I've just heard that is permitted. Is that right? Certainly no neighbor has ever complained.
Well, you invited me once. That's right. The square dance.
You're right.
With the students you had, yeah. We had a good time.
Anyway, I appreciate what I'm hearing, that keep the regulations simple, because, you know, there's enough burdensome regulation that affects farming, and it's really a good tone I'm hearing here, so. And
How's the solar project on your barn working?
very well, yeah.
What are you generating?
About what we use on the farm,
Oh, yeah.
13 kilowatts. Yeah, it's very nice.
Good project, and you can't even see it.
It's right, faces east, you're west. Anyway, thank you.
I know what it is. Thank you, Jim. Amy, you have direction?
I think we have direction.
One last go around.
Amy, don't forget the comment Frank made about changing, in that first paragraph of your Agritainment definition, about the
Yep.
product,
The must to
activity must
should.
be- yeah.
Yep, I have that marked down. Yep, thank you.
Candy, it looks like you had a thought in your mind.
Well, I understand where they're going with the sewer systems and overtaxing them with having weddings and things like that. Okay, you all know what I do at my farm. I have a porta pot on my farm from April to November. I mean, I've not had a complaint from anybody. If they have to go, they gotta go, so they use it, you know. It's not, if you're gonna do these activities, the farmer has to be covered. They have to have the facilities, or people aren't gonna come back.
Right.
They have to have the insurance, because if something happens, you're gonna lose it all.
Yeah.
So the farmer has to cover themselves for every activity that they're being involved in. Because if they don't, it's their loss. It's their total loss. So I understand what you're trying to come up with as far as regulation. And there will be maybe one or two people that don't want to comply with that, or don't want to, but they're not going to be in business very long then, because they're not going to have the people that follow them. I mean, it takes time to build a business, and it takes, you have to build the respect of the community in order for that business to survive. And it takes a long time to do that. So, I'm just saying, farmers aren't out there just trying to find a dollar and do everything they can. They have to watch what they're doing. Farmers have always had a bad rap. They, the old adage, the dumb farmer, the stinky farmer, and we're all trying to change our image. And I do that a lot with the school tours that I do. I mean, you don't know how many kids that come off the bus and say, ooh, it stinks here, and they're holding their nose. But by the time they leave, they're having fun. This is a great place to be. And that's what we have to work towards, is improving our image. And we're not going to do anything that's going to lessen that image.
You sweeten them up with ice cream cone. I hope. Thank you, folks. Thank you. Okay, let's flip
2 more months of talking.
flip a page here. We'll go to item C, the Bowl Avenue Road Diet comment.
So we put at your place tonight copies of the comments that were collected on the road diet from our residents. I think it is safe to say our residents are not in favor of the road diet. 58.82% said they were not in favor of it. 41.18% said they were in favor of it. And you can look through their various reasons. A lot of them were concerned about traffic flow. They didn't feel there was enough bicycle traffic to justify the change. One of the comments that I read in here said, why don't we wait until they decide what they're doing with the big road? I always call 322 the big road. The big road. With the 4-lane, with the alignment, and then maybe look at this again. So we have to report back to PennDOT. We'll send them these comments because they did ask, and they had indicated if there wasn't strong support for this, that they would shelve it. So I think maybe right now it's probably prudent to say this was a good exercise. I still think it's a good concept, but let's maybe shelve it and then talk about it again once we know where the big road's going.
For like a couple of years, the dust will fall off the shelf again.
Yeah.
Shake it.
That's what people have commented to me. I said, this is a theory that it's going to be many years before it's implemented, and where there's many different plans, who knows what's going to happen. Although I think bicycles are going to become more common around here than they were, maybe in 5, whenever we have to implement something, I don't know when that would be. I suspect that by that point,
And the electric bike.
We'll know by that time, yes, we'll know by that time.
And I just wanted to point one thing out for the viewers at home. we didn't spend money on any of this study. It was done through money from the tip. So people kept saying, how much money did the township spend on this? You could have spent that on other things. We didn't spend a dime on this. This was all taken care of through the tip. Nigel has a question.
Oh, that,
I almost find it disturbing that people think they know how traffic flow works, but I'm not convinced they do. And so I think a majority of these people that have decided it's not a great idea aren't really thinking about how traffic flows through that corridor, and it's dangerous. And somebody made a comment about somebody being killed. Yeah, if it was a road diet, that wouldn't have happened, because there wouldn't have been 2 traffic lanes going straight through at that point. And the intersection of Church Street and the Bollesburg Pike is awful. And I don't know how many rear-end collisions there have been there. I know there have been a few, and I know a family member of mine was the victim of one. And so the problem is the traffic flow. That's just like when there's a lot of traffic, that left lane's not moving because so many people are turning left anyway. So you basically have a 2-lane road. You might as well have a turn lane there. And then, because everybody wants to be in the left lane, and it's a crazy situation. I think something has to be done safety-wise, even if we, elect not to do that. But I just can't imagine. It's not going to really make a lot of difference. You don't have people overtaking each other between Church Street and Main Street. That's not happening. I'm disappointed. That maybe people aren't getting this. As a professional, I think I do get it. I see how traffic flows, and I think people aren't really thinking deeply about it. So that's my comment. I'd really like a left turn lane going to my neighborhood, and there's at least 250 residences up there on the existing hill property, plus a lot of people seem to be turning left there to go up Memorial Drive into Liberty Hill at this point. So you're having a lot of potential for left turn traffic there. And I say, I cannot think of a time when I've come through there in a peak traffic situation where that left lane wasn't stopped for multiple people going left up the Bollesburg Pike. So.
other comments?
The only comment I have is, I see it's pretty close there, but I'd like to see, I would have loved to have seen more than 102 responses. We have a lot more than 102 people in the township that live in these areas. So, with only getting 102, this is what we've got to work with, so.
It was not a randomized study.
No.
So it was a voluntary study. But I don't think we have the evidence at this time, and I think we need to put it on the back shelf for a little while and revisit it in the future. And maybe in the meantime, get some information out there and keep people informed, so we have a more informed response rate the next time around.
Well, Bruce is right. The information, it was just presented, and it wasn't presented why we were looking at it. Since we changed our village commercial, that was not put together with a good follow-through of why we're doing it. And I explained to everybody, this is just a study, so we'll wait till something happens, we'll figure it out, yeah. It was just presented as a road thing, and they didn't realize it was designed to go with something else.
Much larger
Much larger
concept of
thing,
the
yes.
whole area.
Whenever new buildings are being built along 322 or businesses, that was tied in with that, so we'll see what
And
happens.
the concept you had of the new buildings being built
Yeah.
closer to the road all the way down.
So that's what will trigger something like this. So it's a long way off, and at that time we'll know what we can do over there. Yeah.
I think a lot of people too tied it to, it was for bicyclists.
Well, they didn't like the bicycle lane.
And it really wasn't.
Nobody talked to like
And
the bicycle
it
lane.
wasn't really just for bicyclists. That road is so pedestrian and bicycle adverse that it was trying to make that whole corridor much more pleasant for pedestrians, bicycles, and the businesses out there as they redevelop.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, let's see,
Well, we have a little bit of an audience left. here.
climate action adoption plan, I don't know who's gonna present this one. Amy?
We're not presenting anything. We're just formulating your comments. Because the COG needs them back tomorrow morning.
We have Pam Adams with us from the COG program that put this project together. Good project, good document. You said we received a couple comments, late afternoon comments?
We got one from Ken Risnick, who said that he was very much in support of this plan. I sent that up to you guys before.
That's not on the sheet.
No, that's from the COG. The sheet that you have came from the COG. I did nothing with that. And then we got one from a resident in Fairfield who said she would like to see us push to do something in terms of carbon pricing, and that, I wrote back and explained that we're involved with this stuff, and she suggested that was a good thing. So
And you got those two, Pam?
I will forward them on to you. In fact, I can do that right now.
Go around the board, are there comments we need to share with Pam related to the document?
Yeah, I wrote some comments down. And I know Bud's gonna talk on one of mine, but I'll let him bring that up, and I'll support that. But one of the things that I look at here when I read a lot of this, and my overall perception is, we don't need to move at the speed of light on this thing. You know, I'm still gonna say that, you know, we took the time to put this thing together, and we've had less than a month to review it to get our comments out. I think that we should take some time to do this before we rush it through. So that's one thing that I just, overall, I believe that is. And there's some other things I looked at. The one thing I look at is everything we're talking about on that report is projections. Everything's a projection, and everything's getting catastrophic events, and they're getting worse. Well, I'm here to tell you that in 1972, this area had an event that was catastrophic. We have not had one since. And any of you that don't believe that, remember Agnes. I had my sister's house was picked off the foundation and put 2 miles up in a farmland. That's catastrophic. My aunt's house, all we found were pieces. Well, I think it ended up in the Chesapeake Bay, but don't hold me to that. So you know, we haven't had an event like that in 50 years. Now, is it something we have to do? Yes, but I believe that the township, Harris Township, in my opinion, does a lot for climate action. And we're not sitting there saying everybody's got to get an electric car and everybody's got to do this. We have people that put rain gardens in. We have people that do their own composting in the backyard. You know, we have people that take care of their properties. We do a lot in this township. When we do ordinances, when we look at new developments, we're doing a lot because that's what we can do. We don't have the finances to keep throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars for studies and all that. So one of the things I saw on there was they said we had on the budget, they need $75,000 to get a consultant to tell them how to put this plan into action. Wait a minute, we wrote the thing. Why do we got to have somebody else come back now and tell us how to put it in? Like I said, I'm just think we've got to slow down and look at the cost. There was a comment on this sheet where a lady asked for the cost. What are we looking at for cost? And I read the response from the Center Region, and there's not $1 figure in there that just says, we'll keep you in the loop in the newsletter and go to the link. You know, if we're going to project all this, we need to look at the cost. We need to know what that cost is going to be, because we can sit here and say we're going to do all this stuff, but if we don't have the dollars, there's an old saying, you know, no bucks, no Buck Rogers. You know, you don't have any dollars, you can't do this stuff. So I think we need to slow down and make sure that we're going to fund this. If we're going to do these things, we need to fund them. And finally, I looked at one thing, affordable housing. I brought that up ever since day one. I was in transport, and Mark, you've said in my meetings that I bring it up. And every time I hear about, we got to do the green thing, but nobody wants to talk about affordable housing. We have 40,000 cars that come out from out of the county into this county every day. And over 75% of them are single-person vehicles. Now, if we want to really solve this greenhouse gas effect, we better start thinking about getting our people working and living in our county, not coming in from elsewhere, because that's part of the equation. If we're going to look at it, we got to look at everything. We can't just say this is our favorite thing and we've got to look at it. And I'll lead into Bud's, and he's going to come last, but I'll lead into Bud's, and I will tell you this: passive energy is great. It'll help you. It'll help the cause, but it will not sustain us. Solar and wind will not sustain us. And I put enough time in power generation to tell you that when somebody starts a big load, all of them are going off the line because they can't replace it fast enough. for some of the loads that come. So, like I said, overall, I like this, and I think it's something we've got to do, but I can't sit here today and commit all our funds and everything we do in Harris Township to this one cause. We've got to do what we can do locally, and that's what I would like to see them when they start implementing this. Here's what your township can do. Because at the end of the day, the COG can't pass ordinances, the COG can't fund it, they got to come to us to do that. And that's what I'm going to be looking for when they come to us, is what can we do here locally that we can physically do and afford to make this a reality?
Or
Incentivize it, whatever it would be, what we can do here. We can't do those big things, what we can do here.
Okay, Nigel?
I'm going to pass at this point. But
Mr. Ward, we'll get back to Nigel.
Well, I would say that when I looked at the plan, I view it as largely aspirational. You know, not so much, here's what we're going to do tomorrow, but here's where we like to get to. And, you know, the devil's in the details, and in particular, a lot of these things, it's about carrots and sticks. And of course, everybody likes carrots more than they like sticks. But that's where kind of funding it comes in, and, you know, and offering incentives and stuff like that. So I think it's a great starting point. There's still a lot of work to be done.
I see Pam shaking her head. You know, we've been talking about that even when it was part of the Public Service Committee, yeah. And the housing issue is interesting because Patton Township has a pretty active housing, affordable housing with.
And I remember, Frank, you're, you know, pushing for that when I was on TILA the first time. And it's also actually mentioned pretty prominently.
Yeah, I saw it in there.
In the climate change, as one of the very concrete things that we can do.
And
Absolutely.
Anita is heading your affordable housing task force. Or?
Yeah, she steps off the Board of Supervisors in January. She did not run for re-election.
Oh, okay. So you're going to keep working on the.
But she's going to keep working on it, and Nicole Pollock will also keep that going.
Bud, you want to fill in the pieces that
Everybody else
Frank?
done?
Go ahead.
No.
Go ahead.
Well,
you finished? Go ahead.
I'm on the committee, and we had a meeting today, and they made a motion they moved the motion to send this on to the general forum, and at first I was opposed to it, because I didn't think it was ready. But they had some caveats that, subject to Harris Township's comments. Also, we're sure that this is a documented work in progress, so I don't have any problem with that. Right off the bat, this plan is probably about as important as thing as we're going to talk about for years to come, is this climate action adaptation plan. Once this is flushed out, it's going to be very important. We're going to use this as our guide for living for years to come, and I'm thinking we need to get it right. This I think is probably more important than worry about whether farmers sell cars or horses or cows or whatever. So that we need to think about. So it was necessary, and I'm glad we're working on that way. The only thing is, then the reason I like this is, and part of this, there's something that we can fix, that we know we can fix on this. And National Geographic had a great article about that. It says, an environmental problem we can fix, and that is air pollution. And that's why I think this is important, that we need to have some sort of an action plan, not so much around here, but around the country, around the world. This says more people may have died from this than they died from COVID. Every year, of pollution, bad air, and in Chicago, there's a story about Chicago. Anything I didn't like, they blamed it on someone that they shouldn't have blamed it on. But that's beside the point. Now, one thing's that there's some disagreement on this. And I'm not suggesting we change this plan at all, but I'd like to bring out the point is, in all these plans I've written, the state plan, our plan, there's all these scare tactics are out there. And they're right in the middle of everywhere. Number one, people are dying, more people are dying from this than they're ever dying. Well, there's a study out that less people are dying because of these. Fewer people are dying because we've learned how to cope with it. We've learned how to do that. We have better structures. So fewer people are dying because of these natural disasters than they ever have. And I think it goes back as far as you want to go. 1900, we lost a whole city, Galveston, Texas. So we're down to how many people die a year for this, which is nothing. And that's sort of, I kind of bother with that part is in there as a scare tactic. The other part of the scare tactic is they're talking about severe storms, about how severe storms are getting so bad, so bad. But I found an article, the International Policy on Climate Change, something was like 17 countries and they had working groups 1 and 2 and 3, and here's the article, and it kind of contradicts the fact that severe storms are being caused by climate change. We're probably getting more flooding because our oceans are changing a little bit, but as they study back over the years, there's not been that many more severe. They're cyclic. That goes back, like I said, 1900, which is 200 some years ago, was probably the worst disaster we've ever had in Galveston, Texas. So maybe more, but I'm just saying, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I'm just saying there is some notion out there that maybe the storms aren't severe, maybe they're cyclic. We don't know that yet. So that's why I don't like using scare tactics when you talk about climate action. Let's do it for what it is and why we need it, not try to scare people. And I'll tell you exactly what you're up against. When you have to guard against scaring people. I found this in the state thing. I'm going to read this. We're like the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it? U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat from New York. Now how do you work that? You're going to end in 12 years, and that's the kind of things we have to combat against. We're developing our climate action plan. Get somewhere in the middle where everybody can buy into it. We need to get everybody buy into it. Okay. Now, the only thing is that I would add, I want to bring out in this plan, I brought them out today. And in that plan, there was a issue on nuclear. Okay, nuclear, whichever you want to have. This is by Sonia Patel. And I got this out of here. Nuclear is the bastion of Pennsylvania's newest climate action plan. Is expected to provide an increasing share of electricity in future years. It also highlights state modeling, maintaining nuclear generation at current levels, and creating a carbon emissions-free grid should be what we need to do. So we need to, in my opinion, we need to promote. We have 4 nuclear stations in Pennsylvania, 5 maybe. I can tell you, it doesn't matter how many there are. There's 4 or 5 of them. And we need to see that as far as I can see in the future, I don't know how many years, maybe 50 years or 100 till 2021, that is the cleanest energy you're ever going to get. And we have to work on how to make that a safe energy, because it's too cheap to charge, right? It's too cheap to charge. Anyhow, so natural gas, I like to see something in here that says promotes natural gas as an interim way to go. There's some studies that say, and I could dig them out, that say that since we are going to more and more natural gas, our carbon emissions are going down. They're starting to mitigate. So as an interim, we should push natural gas until we can get all this other worked out. I'm not going to say that we are not going to be able to sustain this world on wind and solar. I don't know how we are, but maybe we will. But to me, I don't think we will. In the long run, I don't think you can produce enough solar energy or wind energy to sustain this world or this country. So those 2 things I'd like to see in there. And my first part of things you have to be caution against. So that's about all I had to say. Yeah, and I don't know how much, like Frank, I was kind of surprised you want to spend $75,000, which I don't know what it's for, but maybe just put that in the budget, just a what if. I don't know that.
Denny, we have a comment from.
Okay.
Can you please go to the mic?
Could you introduce yourself, please?
All right. I'm sorry I'm not in my nice clothes. I was sitting in next door listening to all you guys.
Was that
It didn't do the noise ordinance or anything. We weren't that loud.
Yeah,
were we?
you were making
too
too
loud,
much.
are we?
So anyway, I'm Jenny Evans. I'm a faculty member at Penn State. I happen to study severe storms and climate change. And I'm glad to hear you guys supportive of the plan. but there are more severe storms. I studied Hurricane Agnes. That's one of the kinds of storms I study. And there are more severe storms. And the study you quoted, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, says in the balance of evidence strongly that severe storms are increasing because of climate change. So those are things that have been, yeah. I mean, yeah. So those are things that are now very strongly supported by the scientists. And, you know, I didn't start off saying, oh, climate change is everything. I'm a scientist, and I'm a scientist in climate science. And I spent 2 decades trying to convince myself whether or not this was right. And I really think that the science is saying now we have to do something. And I don't know what the budget's like and what you're going to do right now, but it's going to cost if we do it, and it's going to cost if we don't do it. Because whatever the decision, if it's a non-decision, it's a decision. So that's part of what you have to think about, right? If you say do nothing, that's a decision, and that has consequences. And you say do something, it's a decision, and probably it's different consequences. But saying you're not going to change is still a decision, and it's still going to cost somewhere. So anyway, I had to say something because you guys were right in my wheelhouse.
We got out of your house, didn't we? We got you out of your house, didn't we?
Yeah, I wasn't going to come over here, but I'm sitting over there listening to you, and I was like, I got to go and say something.
Who said Zoom isn't good?
Okay, now we know how to get Jenny out to a meeting, by golly.
She's still logged into the
Well,
Zoom.
and just a quick response to Jenny. Jen, one thing too, just a quick response. We're not advocating doing nothing. We still want to do this. We like the plan. We're just trying to throw some things out that we need to pay attention to. That's all.
Yeah, and I heard that, and I was really glad that I heard you say you were supportive of the plan. When I read it, I thought it was a really good start and put everything in a really good local context. So, you know, I was glad to hear that. I just wanted to put some other context in since you were talking right in my wheelhouse.
I wasn't looking through the window.
What, we're up against?
You could have. I was over there.
Dorothy, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi, Dorothy.
Hi, how are you? And I'm really glad to hear that you're. Oh, I'm Dorothy Blair. I live on West Main, and I'm very glad to hear that you're supportive of it. And I'm thinking, you know, this is not all hardware. There's other things that we can do that we should, and especially as we have a lot of ag in this county. I mean, this township. And we have a lot of trees, and those are really big parts of things. So I think, you know, just maintaining a lot of trees when we develop and making sure that they are, that the land is supportive of those trees. It's not going to be knocking them down. Also, the farms using more cover crops and that sort of thing, that just goes a long way to improving the soil. So I think it doesn't have to be all hardware and expensive, but they're awful, you know, it's just, I mean, we know that they're meeting in Glasgow right now to try to promote this. And I have to say, I did a lot of work in Africa, and this was 2012, 2013, 2014, and the amount of climate change, the deaths, the destruction of crops, it just isn't, this problem is not equally distributed. We are a county that has almost the least we could possibly have in the way of climate change, but we also produce a huge amount with all the traffic that is drawn to the games and the people who are coming in and out, right, one person. And we make, there's ways of addressing that, and the bus system has addressed that with vans that go out to small towns and bring back people. That we should require that. It's the amount of traffic on all of our roads has gotten insupportable, and we haven't really dealt with that issue, reducing it with buses, with other things.
One thing, Dorothy, I would tell you is is that's the crux of the problem. We know what we need to do with like
Right.
people coming in with vans and
Mhm.
whatnot, but it's the old adage, you can lead the people to water, or horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Well, what I meant-
Trying to get,
yeah.
that's part of this education thing, is to try to
Right.
get them educated to do that.
Well, I think they're using vans. Phillipsburg has a van from our bus, and they're from various places. So to improve that program, get people off the road, and maybe have traffic mechanisms that don't require full stops, like roundabouts. And every time I go down to toward Pine Grove Mills, and I'm on 45, and I'm hitting 26, you just wait and wait and wait. And if that was a roundabout, that could be very useful to keep the traffic flowing. People don't have to come to a full stop. They can feed into a round, and they could have them in various places. I mean, that's just other solutions that and they're using that in New York a lot, and it doesn't slow down.
That intersection is targeted in the next couple of years to have a major.
Are they going to put
major
lights
upgrade.
up? Are they going to put lights up there?
An intersection.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's.
A roundabout, because.
They studied a roundabout
Yeah.
for
They
there.
did?
They
And what
couldn't get in
happened?
there.
They do a roundabout study now for almost every intersection that PennDOT looks at.
But do they use them all? I haven't seen any come up.
They look at them to see if it meets their criteria or their warrants for a
Mhm.
roundabout.
I think
but
there's,
they
I
do
can't
look
remember
at
what,
Well, I don't want to fight about that. But I'm saying this is a crisis for many people, just much less so for here, although we did have that, about 4 years ago, we had that microburst. That how many trees came down? How long did you have your power out? It was scary for us in West Main. I mean, really scary.
4 days.
Because we get the wind.
4 days.
And
You didn't stay home.
I know there's just, I think we are living in a bubble here, in a way. I think the township is in a bubble. Our county is in a bubble because they are predicting the least climate change for us, but we're producing an awful lot of gases. And I think we have to, deal with that. I mean, we have to do our part. So there's other ways we can deal with this, and I just would urge you to be as supportive of Pam Adams' work as possible, and try to do some things that don't cost so much money, right? Yeah.
Can't take you anywhere. Our colleague from Patton Township would like to share thoughts with us. Betsy?
Right, so Betsy Whitman, the only reason I came up here was so I could take my mask down backwards. And I told Pam to come up and share the podium with me because we hear you, Bud, and we hear you, Frank. So I've got to say that for the first time in my life, I sat down, not the first, but recently, I sat down and looked very seriously at nuclear energy. Okay. And I've ended up at a website called Energy for Humanity. And I've seen a couple of quick TED Talks, which are a quick way to get a lot of technical information from me. And so you're right, we can't solve this with solar and wind. And, I don't know that we as a nation or as a world are ready to embrace nuclear. I mean, a lot of countries have. France, 80% is their nuclear energy. And Pennsylvania, by the way, for the record, we have 4 nuclear power plants, and it supplies a third of our energy usage. What concerns me personally about nuclear power is the storage, and we haven't gotten around to solving that. Plus the security of enriched uranium. I think it's something that we need to look at. But I think we're not very smart if we put our heads in the sand and don't keep that on the table. But my understanding, and I had a lot of talk back and forth with Pam on this, is, what is our job here in Center County? So the first thing that came to mind when I was listening to you today, Bud, was you were talking about nuclear, and I said, could we have a nuclear power purchase agreement? Could we? Could we? We might be able to. I don't know that we can. And I think
Use it to
right.
produce a emissions-free grid.
But right now, practically, I don't know if we could, hook into any of the 4 existing plants. I don't know. They're probably working at capacity. And I know that the likelihood of building a new one right now, it doesn't have a lot of political will to get a nuclear power plant built in the United States. That's fine, and it takes a long time. I'm not saying it can't be done, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be done. And I think that's where my thinking has changed in the last 6 to 8 hours when I've been looking at this kind of stuff. I'm not certain that it's necessarily in the purview of this particular climate action plan. We could never have a nuclear power plant here in the center region. We could possibly maybe have a industrial solar farm. I don't know. Right now it's zoned out. The reality of having a nuclear power plant within the center region is small, but it's not unlikely that there would be a plant built somewhere and we could hook into it. I also think that I've looked at the plan, and so we're getting the syntax down. We talk about clean, renewable energy. Well, not all renewable energy is clean. Wood stoves are not clean. I mean, I heard some foresters the other day on a statewide webinar saying that if you use the wood that is discarded from cutting lumber or making pulp, and you use that in pellet stoves, then yes, burning that, you kind of break even on your carbon budget, because otherwise it would stay in the ground and decay and give off the CO2. If you burn it, you're giving it off. But if you cut down a living, breathing tree, especially for the record, for a ginkgo, which is a high carbon sink tree, you are not doing the world any favor if you burn that tree, because you're emitting more greenhouse gas than that tree could ultimately take in its lifetime. Okay, so not all renewable stuff is clean, but not all clean stuff is renewable, and that there's nuclear energy. It's not necessarily renewable, but it is clean. So I think we need to do a better job of defining clean in the report, or maybe come up with something. Anyway, so I know.
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about.
Leading into Pam.
And Pam's
Into
got more of
the report.
She knows the report better.
Well, there's just lots of things, and I hear what you say, but I also just want to try to make sure that the report is trying to look into the future and doesn't know what all the technologies are going to be. The technical advisory group looked at hydrogen. We really think hydrogen is going to be a bridge, just as natural gas is. So there's details in here that aren't spelled out because we don't know what the next technology is going to be. So
That spells that out in this article also, hydrogen is
yeah,
supposed to
yeah.
get that.
So we know there's things, and nuclear is not being excluded from here. It's just we in Center County, Center Region, we can advocate if it's something that Harris Township wants to advocate in the plan. There is advocating at the state level for things for the utilities. Again, it's our utility that uses the nuclear, it's not homeowners. So our focus is on something that's sort of tangible, that our residents can do to have a choice. It's not saying that everybody is going to use solar. We're not really promoting wind a lot because it doesn't make sense to put wind in the valley. It can go on the mountains, but again, that's a utility statewide decision. So if you want, your comments can come through as far as nuclear and natural gas, but it's not, the technical advisory group has looked at this as far as for our community, working with homeowners and getting 10% of them homes and 5% businesses to look at renewable, and then advocating at the state level for a more diverse grid is also advantageous. I don't think any technical advisory person thinks we're going to 100% renewable because that technology just can't handle it right now. So it's trying to, we've had discussions on plastics, and some people wanted plastics out of here and help reduce waste, but that's a level of detail that isn't necessarily impacting our emissions. So that's one thing. If you have a specific area where you think that it fits in here, or you really feel that it's not being addressed. But again, our objective is to develop a resilient energy portfolio through diversified sources. That's not all renewable. So I feel like we have heard and we are trying to make this a level playing field. Obviously, it is promoting a lot of solar because right now it's only 1%. So that does come off maybe as a little too strong. So I don't know if that helps answer.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
I don't usually say it.
Yep, if we're still talking about that, I have other things to add too. But
I was going to say, because solar also is something that an individual homeowner can do. We happen to be on, we get all of our electric power now through wind energy through our electricity carrier, but we're considering solar, because then that's one more person that will be able to get solar based on the grid. Yeah, so I just wanted to say, it's really what we can do. And then while I'm up here, can I just say something about the scary tactics?
Yeah.
So I get it. Scare doesn't work anyway. It doesn't work in my book.
It isn't helping us.
I don't think that, and I'm very careful not to
Right.
do that. And we
Right.
don't, it's not done that in this plan.
right, we weren't trying to do that. So if there's particular things, we used information that we got from the DEP and from the different statistics. So we're just trying to lay it out there and that these have impact. So it was not trying to be scare tactics. It starts out with that information, and maybe you prefer that, but it sort of is why we're working on this. So it wasn't intended to be all scary. We included a lot of stories about partnerships. It's going to be really key. The UAJ and Penn State looking at renewable energy because it saved them money. I mean, that's also another reason why there's a focus right now on solar, is because it is currently price competitive. But people have choice whether they want to use natural gas, and if they have that ability, they should. Where I live, I don't have the option to put natural gas in. I'm out in West Ferguson, and I don't think it's going to be coming anytime soon. I use fuel oil at my own house, and so I'm not saying I don't have an option. Right, I don't have an option, but we want to help disseminate information and work with our utilities to keep giving people options. So that's one thing. I did hear, I didn't know that people felt that there were scare tactics. I'm not trying to do that at all. We really were just trying to present some information and talk about sort of the good things that are happening here. So we can look at that. I mentioned the hydrogen, and then as far as the costs, I did indicate that it was created with staff time, and I'm happy to report, some cost numbers on there, but it's not just me, and it's not my full-time, the only thing I'm working on, and there really were many hours of local volunteers. We don't have any mandates for taxes and fees, and as far as the budget going forward, every time we'd be going through that process, it would go through the committee level, and be whoever is on the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee will help set priorities. So Harris really has the opportunity, if they're interested in advocating at the state for more nuclear, they can bring that item to the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee, and we can advocate and send letters. So there's definitely those types of options. But that's some of my comments.
You adequately responded to that cost issue. That's number 3.
Yep.
And then when you look over to the COG reply, I think we talked about that cost being spread over yourself and other people in staff.
Right. I can put a number there, but it would be.
I don't think it's necessary. My comment to you was that because the Recycling Refuge Authority is about 3/4 of the way done with the strategic plan, that if you turn back to page 13 on the solid waste, encourage reducing waste at the source of municipal, we're talking about that. Diversion from homes and businesses, improve effectiveness of waste management, and support locally produced products. We're talking about all those. And interestingly, we've added to that looking at more recyclable opportunities, particularly the agriculture industry, and the biodigester, something smaller than what UAJA is thinking about, perhaps on-farm biodigesters that would produce methane, and the farmer could use the methane to power equipment. So we were looking at that too, but that'll be coming out of the strategic plan from the authority.
Good point, because it's a partnerships and helping set a vision for other entities in the community that this plan is intended to do. It is not mandating that your township or all the townships have to do something, but it's helping to guide. And that's what it's intended to. And each municipality will pick, if you want, as it is from like a menu, as to what your interest level is. And I will remind you that it's in line with what your resolution that you passed in 2017, that you're, trying to get to net zero by 2050, I think. That was something that you passed before. So this can help that. I will also point out that by having a plan, when there are grant opportunities, it's helpful to have this. Ithaca just had an article in the paper about their plan to get to 100% decarbonization, which is not what we are defining, but they have gotten over $100 million of private investment because they're putting this plan together and they're going to work on energy efficiency for their existing buildings. So there are these possibilities that can come to fruition by having this with private investment. This is not intended to be all taxpayer money, but we have to figure out what that cost is going to be, and that's one of the things the Climate Action Sustainability Committee is going to be working on. They've asked for a 3 to 5 year plan as far as what is this going to cost and what resources are needed.
You have to be impressed with that. That's just a good thing.
But I don't know how to address, you guys can submit your comments, but if you feel like it's being rushed, it has been talked about for over a year. The public survey comments we received in the spring, we've talked about those, the outline in July, so we're not trying to rush it, push it through. We just felt like we were ready.
Well, let me ask a question then, to my 2 points. You don't think that should be included in there that as a interim use natural gas rather than fuel oil or coal, promote natural gas, which is much less emissions than that, and that's something that I don't see how until years from now, when natural fossil fuels are too expensive to mine, too expensive out of the ground, we're going to use them. Up until, I think the projection was 2100.
Yep,
So,
no, I think that we could put that under objective number 1 with the resilient portfolio through diversified sources. So it's promoting it, again, do I say to remove it from coal? It just gets into more detail than I had intended.
Well, we have natural gas here.
Right.
And I would encourage people, if you're burning fuels or if you're burning coal or wood,
Right.
go to natural gas. And
Yes.
because you're not going to get your power from nuclear, and you're not getting the electricity from renewable energy. There's not enough renewable energy plants in the world that supplies that kind of electricity. So
a sentence under the objective of develop a resilient energy portfolio.
What page you got, Pam?
63.
And I don't know how you would include the nuclear option in that. I think that, I don't know, unless there's something besides the hydrogen and something out there we don't know about, and I'm sure there is, there's got to be something replacing your internal combustion engine. That's the cheapest way, that's the cheapest and cleanest way to go. There's 5, nuclear is not cheaper than.
Nuclear is not even cheaper than renewables anymore.
It's not right now.
Without government subsidies, nuclear is.
Well, everything depends on government subsidies.
Still, it's not cheaper, and it's going to take you 10 years to get a power plant online, even if you want to get one.
Oh, it takes a long time, there's no doubt about it. But
And there were 2 being built on the East Coast that stopped being built because they weren't going to be financially viable.
well, they aren't putting any money into them, that's for sure. They're out of the 5
Well, they
plants we
stopped
have.
building
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Well,
And that's still at the utility state level, but if you're interested in that it's hard, that I have a harder time putting in here because we're not telling the utilities.
Yeah.
We're
Well, I mean,
advocating,
that's-
we're
you're right.
advocating.
That's just suggestions.
And that's part of implementation. I mean, that's really gets to the implementation of what we're going to advocate at the state level. We do want to work with utilities and stakeholders, but if we get to, like, that is the promoting natural gas over coal, and like, for people to choose that over fuel oil.
Well, I certainly would, and I knew in our facility we're set up to do that, in our brand-new facility. As soon as it becomes available, we're gonna do it, because it's gonna save us money, it's gonna cut emissions, it's gonna do everything, until we can go that way, yeah.
When the gas line was run from Brush Valley Road to the Hannibal brand food processor on 45, they ran 3 miles along Brush Valley Road, cut down Pennsylvania Avenue in Center Hall, and ran to the cannery with the intent of getting 300 residents of Center Hall converted to natural gas. And I think they're getting very close to it, because they're branching blocks off of Pennsylvania Avenue with the intent of picking up more people, and it's working. They got a $7 million subsidy to run to Hannibal brand, but they're also picking up all the customers in Center Hall. And anyone along Brush Valley Road, like the greenhouse, converted to natural gas.
Well, like I said before, this is going to be our Bible for living, when we hash this out and get all of the questions answered, yes and no, and not try to this statement of in 10 years, and that's supposedly she's a U.S. representative.
When you started reading that, I was like, it's not in our plan.
I know that.
Okay,
That's what you're fighting.
Right.
That is what you're fighting.
Yes, we're trying to make this a consensus, and that was another one of the comments on unity and more outreach and more conversation. So we totally recognize that, and we think there's a lot of things in here that are pragmatic.
We're in a bubble. We don't have a problem. We're in a bubble. What we do here isn't going to mean much in the overall scheme of things, but this is a good plan as a good working plan for other people to look at.
Another comment?
Okay. Oh, okay. I was just going to ask Bruce, what?
Right now, they are realizing how much methane, natural gas is methane, right? And methane is a major climate change gas. It's about 82 times as much as CO2 in terms of its impact. The thing is that natural gas leaks in many different ways out before it gets burnt. So it does produce a major climate change effect at the gas.
Not major.
Oh, yeah.
I will agree with you. We have to learn. That's something we have to learn.
Yeah,
we have to learn how to control that and what to do. That's part of the process of what we have to do. All of this thing, we have to learn how to control the methane. Same as we have to learn how to control all the carbohydrates. And I agree with you on that.
Right.
There's
So
an issue
but
they
I
have to
don't
work
think
on.
we've not been able to do that well because it leaks every spot, down in the pipeline, and it goes into the house. All these different places, you have to really be extremely careful.
I agree. That's something we have to work at.
If we could, use that, the farmer using methane and using it and making it into CO2 is a really good thing, because he's controlling what would have come off his fields as methane, and that's a really wonderful use of.
Cows produce methane.
Yeah, cows
We
produce.
did a waste sort at the authority with respect to what's being dumped on the floor and what could be transferred to the UAJ digester system.
Right.
25% of the waste that's being dumped could be transferred over to UAJ.
It's
as
true.
part of their
We
methane
really need to
project.
know how to control the methane that we're producing, and it's a deadly gas too. If you get around too much of it, it sinks and kids die. It's pretty, it's really. But I just want to make that comment because now the big push at the international level is to control methane.
Oh, yes, we
Yeah.
should. No, just
Okay.
no doubt about it.
Great.
Betsy, one final comment. We're going long enough on this. Now, Nigel was holding back his thoughts. We're going to give him a last chance, but go ahead, Betsy.
So Bruce, I just wanted to follow up on your comment about aspirational for the plan. Were you saying that as a bad thing? That is lacking in methodology?
Just recognizing what it is.
Awesome.
It's not
Okay.
about today, it's about the future.
Cool.
And it's not, there's details to be filled in.
Yeah. A lot of
But that's what our job is down the road.
It's a work in progress.
But a lot of teeth in it. Not teeth so much.
Okay, Nigel, final one.
Yeah, just a quick comment. Yeah, interim natural gas does seem promising. Lieutenant Governor Fetterman has stated that publicly, that he believes we just can't jump into it. And he's very progressive and, concerned about climate change. So I understand that. I also understand it's a concern with there's unknown amounts of methane being released in the fracking processes, and that's really bad. So there has to be more regulation, but that's pretty much my only comment.
Let's move on. You have enough to,
I'll send you comments in the morning. Pam, how about it? You're welcome.
and it was good to have you here to hear them directly. Yes, sir.
Just an offer. Most of you know, I spent a lot of time on a nuclear power plant. I've touched them. I've been inside the reactor compartment. I've done all that. I've run them from a natural standpoint. I know a lot about, if anybody wants me to do a little presentation to their committee, I'll be more than happy to come out and talk to them and reduce the fear. If it was me, they could put one in my backyard today.
I hear no takers on that one. Okay, let's move into item E, the operating budget. There's a motion. I would entertain a
Good
motion.
conversation. You got some action going over there.
I make a motion, we tentatively approve the 2022 Harris Township budget and set formal adoption and public hearing on it for December 13th, 2021.
Second. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Nigel did it,
You
but okay.
didn't suggest a reduction in property taxes? I thought you were
I
going to
didn't
do
say
that.
anything like that. I just
Thought you were
read what
going
was
to.
on the paper.
We have a motion and second. All in favor of that's if I'm saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Okay. The 21-3 capital improvement. Motion there too.
Move to approve Resolution 21-23, adopting the 2022-2026 capital improvement program.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. That's projected on to 2026, so we got a lot of action there. Discussion, not? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, manager's report?
Just one thing that Cindy Hahn will kill me and not shoot me from my good side anymore if I don't ask you this. January 3rd, CNET has to film every blasted reorganization meeting in the county, and we all have to reorganize on January 3rd. So she asked if we would hold our meeting at 7:30 to help with coverage of all the meetings in the county. So are we?
January 3rd?
Yeah, 7:30
I
p.m.
guess we're not going to go to a New Year's Day bowl game, so I guess I'll be here.
You'll be coming home then.
Yeah.
We got 7:30. We usually push to 4 o'clock.
Yeah, she said it doesn't help her. She said stay at 7:30. No
She doesn't
cookies
wanna
this
buy us
year.
cookies, that's
Yeah,
all.
she
That's
said
what
no,
I'm saying, cookies.
no cookies this year, but she'll continue to shoot me from the good side.
Consensus, be okay? I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, we'll be in the big meeting room. We'll move back into our office then.
Okay. Anything else to the purple sheet?
Not from me.
Oh, the number 4, the working group. How big is the group is it? 10, 11?
13 people on that, plus we have some members of the general public that have indicated they'd like to come, and a member of the planning
Are
commission
they
is going
meeting
to come.
here tomorrow night?
No, they're meeting in the township building tomorrow.
13 of them.
Yes.
That's ought to be good.
Well, there's a couple that can't make it, but it's,
Okay.
we pulled, and Mark pulled together all the research so we know kind of where we've been, and I
And that-
emailed it to you already.
That's sort of then
I emailed it Friday.
that's a select process of them choosing their chair.
Yep.
and
Oh, my goodness, they have to have a chair.
The order, well.
Yeah.
Frank's in charge, isn't he?
Frank,
Are you,
Frank, if you stop in tomorrow, I can give you all that.
All right, okay.
Okay.
Anybody
printed out
else on the
copies.
purple sheet?
No, I'm
We good? Okay. Approval of vouchers, someone give me a voucher number?
Okay. I make a motion, we approve voucher number 2021-10 for $131,083.99.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pay the bills.
Okay. COG committee report, executive committee,
Oh, jeez.
set the agenda for the general forum. Public service and environment, we talked about a lot of different things. Yeah. This is last, we talked about.
We already did that one.
We already did.
And the solar power purchasing is in the planning stages. The contract was awarded to Green Mountain Energy, so. Okay, Mr. Graham, Wilson, Human Resources.
No report.
Okay, thank you. Finance, Bud?
We forwarded, I guess we already did that, didn't we? We forwarded the budget over to, and they just referred it back to us? No. I forget where we're standing
sent it
now. We're
out
done
for-
with the budget.
Send it out for comments.
We sent it out for comments, and we have to have the comments back by when?
Like
Tonight?
No, like in the next week or so.
That's why our meeting's on the 18th or something like that. Okay. But I don't, I think with the conversation, we don't see too much change in that. There'll be a couple of changes, but.
Climate action and heritage, both of yours, Bud.
Well, what do you want now? You have another hour and a half here?
Oh, God.
No,
We're
we'll
great.
Give you a minute.
Progressing nicely.
What about the museum?
Oh, museum is closed. It will be open, I forget what date we said. I'll get it later. We have a new display. We have a lot of things going on over there. We have a very good board, very active board, so what more can I say?
Okay, good. Frank, you have land use, community infrastructure, facilities, and a connector project. Any of those you want to highlight?
Did not meet, and nothing new on the connector.
I have
you.
one thing on the connector real
I
quick.
know, I saw it today, I wouldn't.
The stuff you sent us?
Yeah, and actually he just wrote back again about saying they didn't, I said to him, don't look at the old mapping, like the big rumor in town is that you just used the corridors from 2003 and you didn't update the mapping, and he said that's
This
not.
is from the PennDOT?
From Dean Ball, yeah, he said that's not true, and I said, I gave him suggestions of roads to look at that perhaps were a little more context sensitive
I have
and
another
more
one that's still in
creative.
that
So,
menu.
they're looking at it, and then they're gonna set a date to meet with us, and who knows when that'll be.
You didn't read it right. What he said was, I'm gonna ignore you till after the new data comes out. We aren't gonna
Yeah,
hear from him till
and
January.
that's when I wrote back,
exactly
and I
what he
said, I realize I'm a broken record, but.
I want to suggest they look at US Route 30
Yes,
across Ohio,
yes.
from Mansfield all the way to almost Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's a 4-lane, at-grade highway, moves really well. Maybe one or two big interchanges. Other than that, it's a wonderful road. We take it when we go to Chicago all the
Is
time.
it bifurcated?
Bifurcated.
Bifurcated?
Bifurcated.
Bifurcated.
Not
No,
bifabricated.
Bifurcated.
runs really well, so.
No, it means that there's no,
Yeah.
oh, you know what that means.
What that means.
Oh, okay.
Oh, gosh, okay.
Bruce?
Public safety didn't meet, Parks Capital did not meet, the Parks Authority did meet. We accepted a couple of bids.
Okay.
You'll hear about them. I guess the one thing that's going on is we've been talking about food truck concession discussions, having something that's mobile that we could service. In the interim, service Hessfield, service the pools, but service Hessfield, service Oak Hall. And so, nice report looking at the economics of that, and I think it's feasible. So we'll see what happens.
So they're doing a business plan on that?
Yeah. Yep, here you go.
I think that's a no-brainer. It's gotta make money.
It's better, it's cheaper than what they've been doing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, talking about governance and the sports park and, same old, so, that's it.
And the realigned schedule for the authority, the exec committee, and approving bids by the third week in December is coming out.
Yeah.
There's a snag in all of that. The date,
A snagging?
a snag. The date that they picked for the general forum meeting doesn't work because it's the night of the thing that President Barron has for all of us.
I don't care.
I heard he wasn't having it.
He's having it.
We can have it there.
Oh, my God. Okay.
Okay, well, we'll deal with
I
that.
don't get paid enough for that.
That hasn't been, I haven't seen anything about the gathering.
It was confirmed today. Eric
okay.
confirmed it with Sharima.
Move we adjourn.
Yeah.
What's the date of that?
15.
December.
You got something for us to sign?
Yes. I got two.
I guess over.
Wait, hold on. Let me end the Zoom meeting.
I know.
I didn't know we were supposed to vote on.